Hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. This is your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School, where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaging debates, the most interesting topics going on in the world today. And today is no different. We got a lot to cover. We know for the last few months, we've been talking about fraternities and sororities and hazing. Omega Psi Phi has been expelled from a campus for reasons that we'll get into, obviously connected, maybe not obviously, but connected to the death of that young man from a few months ago. Shocker, a black man was beaten by police. We'll talk about that story. We'll get into not just the specifics of the case, but the broader question of what do we do? How do we make sense of these kinds of incidents of state-sponsored, state-sanctioned, or just state violence against vulnerable populations of this country, but especially Black folk? We're going to talk a little bit about the DOJ, this really developing story, and it gets more and more interesting, more and more convoluted. I'm talking about Ghislaine Maxwell and connected to the Epstein trial. Ghislaine Maxwell is going to be interviewed by the DOJ, and people on both sides of the aisle, including some of Trump's tinfoil hat wearing adherents, are asking for more transparency around Epstein. To be clear, I'm not saying that the Epstein stuff ain't true. I'm just saying that some of the people who are on the right, who normally are looking for Trump to unpack the deep state and to tell the truth about what's going on, are a little disappointed that Trump isn't being very Trumpy on this issue. But before we get to any of that, Hulk Hogan is dead. I was going to write a fancy headline, but he doesn't deserve it. He's just dead. And I grew up as a huge pro wrestling fan. I understood and understand what it means for someone who I believe is on the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling to be gone, and to think about his legacy, to think about his life. But to talk about Hulk Hogan, you can't just talk about the pythons. You can't just, that's what he called his arms, 36-inch pythons. You can't just talk about saying your prayers and eating your vitamins. You can't just talk about I am a real American. You can't just talk about Rocky. You got to talk about the whole legacy, and it's a messy one. So I wanted to make sure that we had a conversation about Hulk Hogan tonight before we get into the other stuff, about what he means, about what he meant to pop culture, what he meant to sport, what he meant to wrestling in particular, but also what the full legacy is. And who better to do that than my main man, Dave Zirin. He is a writer. He is a thinker. He's a sports fan, although he roots for the wrong teams. He is an incredible, passionate, transparent, and courageous voice for liberation around the globe. And so, Dave, it's good to see you, my brother. I'm always happy to see you, always happy to talk to you.
Great to talk to you too, man. Let's do this.
Hulk Hogan's dead. What do you say?
Well, let's start with this. Given my age, I came up when Hulkamania came up, and you better believe it, I was a little Hulkster. I said my prayers. I ate my vitamins. I looked at this 6 foot, 8 inch, 300-pound, leather-skinned charisma bomb. And that's what people really don't understand. There are a lot of people 6'8", 300 pounds in wrestling history. Dude had a charisma and magnetism that for someone my age, a kid, a 9-year-old, I mean, that was catnip. It was just, it was an unbelievable narcotic, especially because your parents didn't dig it. At least mine didn't. So that made it one of those things. Like I shared basketball and baseball, with my dad. I wasn't sharing pro wrestling with him. That was mine. And Hulk Hogan was all of that. And he wasn't just the strongest. He certainly wasn't trying to be the coolest. He was the most honorable.
Yes.
Persona, honor, America. You say what you do. But all of that, and this is what you referenced at the start, was as fake as pro wrestling itself. And that's why today, Mark, I got a call from CNN about coming on to speak about the legacy of Hulk Hogan. And they said to me, hi, would you like to come on? And my response was to say, yeah, I'll come on. And they said, yeah, we want to talk about, Hulkamania and that legacy. And I felt like they were asking me to be part of what in pro wrestling they call a work.
Yeah.
Like they wanted me to be, frankly, if you've seen the kind of like embarrassing way that ESPN covers pro wrestling, where they pretend like it's like this real thing that's going on.
They buy into the kayfabe.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they wanted me to be part of that, like a work about who this person was. And I said, I'd love to come on, but I'm going to talk about how he was a racist, union busting, anti-freedom, pro-Trumpite, who has been accused of abuse by numerous women in his life. This is not a person who has led a good life. This is somebody, even if you think of him, as you said correctly, as being on that wrestling Mount Rushmore, he also almost single-handedly took down through his own jealousy, selfishness, and paranoia, the two biggest wrestling organizations in the world. And one of them he actually did take down, the WCW. And
let's get.
Yes, sorry.
No, you're laying out all the things, and we got time. So,
racism, union busting, abuse, Trump, and the lawsuit against Gawker that had a horrifying effect on free media in the internet age. That's the Hogan legacy.
No, that's true. I was actually with Hulk Hogan when that Gawker thing happened. That's a whole other. I mean, literally. It's a whole other story.
Are you honestly not going to tell it?
I will. I promise.
Incredible.
I promise. But let's start first for those who don't know, because not everyone was a wrestling kid like you and I were. Pro wrestling under Vince McMahon Jr. becomes bigger than anything we've probably ever seen before. I mean, pro wrestling in the United States in the 50s, 60s, 70s was a big deal, no doubt. But there's just nothing like what we saw when Hulkamania takes over, but also when Vince McMahon Jr. takes the reins from his father and really moves the WWF into the mainstream of American popular culture. Now, the thing that's interesting, I think, is that part of how Vince McMahon did that was to tap into not just the kind of cultural pieces of America, but also the political pieces, and to intersect those two things. I mean, Hulk Hogan wins WWF Championship by defeating the Iron Sheik, which is important because obviously the Iranian Revolution happens in 1979. And he very wisely understood how to play on racism. The WWF was built on this kind of racism, and so when the Iron Sheik wins the title, and before he was the Iron Sheik, they gave him different titles, but one point he was Arab, one point he was Iranian, but they always made him violent, they made him irrational, and they created a whole narrative around this. And he kind of stole the belt from Bob Backlund. Remember when Bob Backlund, his manager, kind of threw the towel in, and there was some sketchiness around it. Ultimately, Hulk Hogan wins the title and kind of recovers the belt from Iran to America at the same time that he's appearing on Rocky. Eye of the Tiger is his theme music before I Am a Real American becomes it. He is the face of America at a moment where under Reagan, where America's trying to figure some shit out. And I think that's important to understand that franchise in the 1980s is built him, Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, there's a whole kind of infrastructure of super American patriotic kind of unquestioning, God bless America and no place else stuff happening. So Hulk Hogan,
I just add everything you're saying. Everything you're saying. What also goes with that was the production design that Vincent Kennedy McMahon brought to it. That the previous, local promoters or regional hucksters, it all kind of looked the same. You had this gym that looked like it might even be in a barn or a very small arena. And the people who would fill it were a lot of like middle-aged folks, white folks.
Yep.
In the South, it would be very multiracial in there, if not segregated. But it was people getting off work who really hated the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And lived and died with the good guys. It was real as Game 7 of the World Series to folks. Vince McMahon embraced the idea of sports entertainment. He said, this is a cartoon. You would watch his shows, it would be Saturday morning, and then he spun off his own cartoon. We had the action figures, turquoise, pink, the yellow polka dots that he put on the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, to mock what the dreams actually stood for. That's a whole other conversation. A lot of racism in that one, too. That was tremendous. That he did against Dusty Rhodes because of Dusty Rhodes' audience among Black people in the South, where he had legions.
Because Dusty was from Georgia and
yeah, soul, baby, as you say. But I could go off, as you can probably tell, in a lot of directions with this. But it's just to say that Vince McMahon found the secret sauce to get rid of grandma ready to punch somebody in the face and bringing in kids. You know, classrooms, kids coming to Madison Square Garden, kids lining up to meet Hulk Hogan. He was a cartoon character come to life.
Right.
And then they had the other people, the experienced wrestlers, really follow suit of turning their personas into cartoon characters.
Yes. And that became what the WWF was about. And for a very significant run, you figure 1984. And again, I mean, this is obviously Malcolm Jamal Warner has loomed large for us, and it was a tragic loss. And so I'm thinking about him too. When I think about the Cosby Show in 1984, I'm thinking about Hulk Hogan winning the championship from the Iron Sheik 1984. We can think about hip hop. I mean, there's a lot happening in 1984 is such an extraordinary year.
The 84 Olympics.
84 Olympics, yes.
Which is a huge one, only because the Russia and the Eastern Satellite States boycotted. So it was just an easy run for the U.S. and we piled up the golds. And instead of, it's so interesting looking back, instead of it looking like sort of an ill-gotten gold, because there was basically no competition there, the USA was amped up to unperceived levels. McDonald's was giving out free stuff based on the gold medals won. I mean, it was a thing. Those 84 Olympics, patriotism, Mary Lou Retton. And you're right. You know what this is all about. We both do. It's about, you know, Reagan attempting to build this cultural idea of the restoration of an America that was lost because of the Black freedom struggle, because of the Jimmy Carter 1970s, because of women's and gay liberation movements. It's like remember with that's, as you well know, the slogan, "Make America Great Again." You know, that was Reagan looking backwards wistfully. And Vince McMahon certainly caught the fever of that. Hollywood, movies like Top Gun, you think of The Switch from the 70s, Auteuris, Scorsese, De Palma, brilliance into the 80s, and the militarism and the Stallone and Schwarzenegger. There was and I think this is such an important thing for us to unpack in the context of Hogan, because I feel like you're seeing it today really for the first time since the 80s, these other circles of what we thought were independent thought and power, like, say, Hollywood, for example, or like sports, where I just can't believe how silent the athletes have been since Trump just took power. You have like this this alignment with a right-wing agenda on fronts that go well beyond Washington, D.C. So that 80s is a really sharp reflection of where we are now.
Absolutely. And that's part of why it's important to unpack Hulk Hogan's legacy and understand what it really was. Because Hulk Hogan, even at a moment where he was positioned as apolitical, he's just a pop culture figure that everyone should love. He was more than that. Even you mentioned Russia. I mean, he's also fighting, Nikolai Volkov. He's wrestling against these Russians, these Arabs and South Asians. He becomes a babyface in the WWF after he was a heel earlier. He was in Vern Gagne's AWA, came to WWF earlier, and he kind of ushered in his babyface term by doing what? By fighting the Wild Samoans, saving Bob Backlund from the Wild Samoans. And we talk about the Wild Samoans, Abdullah the Butcher, all these sort of gross caricatures of Black and brown people. You understand what the WWF was on. And so Hulk Hogan is the face of America. He's the face of whiteness. He's the face of patriotism. And understand, there were few people in America more famous than Hulk Hogan in 1984, 1985, maybe into 1990. I mean, he was a star of stars. As big as the Cosby Show was, Hulk Hogan was singular. I mean, like, it's hard to explain to someone who wasn't there how famous Hulk Hogan was. And so Hulk Hogan
I was trying to explain that when talking to somebody about my kids, about Malcolm Jamal Warner earlier this week. My kids have no conception of what it's like to live in a uniculture. All they know is polyculturalism, and everything is cut up into a million slices. You know, they don't know what it feels like to watch the Cosby Show with 45 million other people, to go to school the next day and everybody saw it. So they're talking about Theo's earring or Theo in the joint or the shirt, you know, that was the hallway conversations. And it certainly wasn't just the Cosby Show, you know, and one of the things that I remember it becoming very much, in addition to hip hop of that time, which growing up in New York was like this toy that we felt like we all discovered, but pro wrestling too. It became the cultural childhood parlance. And that's why I want to go back to that point about Vince McMahon looking at an empty arena and seeing it filled with seats instead of chain smoking grannies. And And that was a business innovation. Oh, by the way, he also mercilessly took over the territories of others, breaking long truces that existed in the pro wrestling world.
Yeah, he didn't believe in them.
Billionaire, you know, he's a monopolist, friend of Trump, accused sex trafficker, accused rapist, and Hulk Hogan's best buddy. They looked out for each other.
So let's get to that, because what people are hearing right now is, okay, Hulk Hogan was the face of an organization, a franchise. The organization might have some interesting political or ideological leanings, but Hulk Hogan was an American hero. Why is he so bad? Because we can't blame Hulk Hogan for Vince McMahon's madness. So what did Hulk Hogan do that was so bad? That's what some people are wondering right now.
We were just talking about a polyculture versus a uniculture. I'm not even sure his actual anti-heroism with which he lived what I consider to be just a very, very repugnant 71 years on this earth. I think other people would find virtues. I mean, that's what Trumpism is really all about. Like, when I think of Hulk Hogan, I think of the way he held down black wrestlers, brown wrestlers, using his influence as a friend of Vince McMahon, like really ruined careers. And frankly, there are more than a few white wrestlers who would say the same thing. That's part of it. But then also, like, his liberal use of the N-word, which people had talked about forever. Yes. And then it was caught on tape, released on tape, I should say, 10 years to the day from today. How's that for a wild, kismet, serendipitous? In this case, God is maybe not merciful, but God is appropriately vengeful.
Yes, I'll take it. I'll take an Old Testament God right now.
Yeah, this is my Old Testament God saying, okay, all the news stories then have to say, wildly, this is also the 10-year anniversary of the release of tapes where this living American saint, who we're all crying over, said the N-word 1,000 times in the most foul, repulsive context imaginable. But that's the thing. It's like he's connected to racism as a state of mind. And also he was committed to racism structurally in his world. And he did try to apologize for these things over the years. But then in comes Trumpism to say to him, we are here to rehabilitate you. And all the things you're apologizing over, well, actually, these are virtues. And that's, I think, where he ended up as this kind of person in thrall of Trumpism, willing to just humiliate himself for this, desiccated orange ball of nothing. And him doing that, to me, I think of him in the 1980s, and someone much smarter than I needs to write about this, but how is Hulk Hogan not the embodiment of American decay over the last 40 years? I mean, in terms of physically, what it looks like when the steroid-addled muscles begin to lose you, when the fake leathery skin starts to fall off your body. Age gets us all. But, age doesn't mean you still have to wear the tank top and pretend that you're still 35 years old when you're pushing 70. Those are choices that you make. And it's that preening idea of, he just was on reality show after reality show, cheapening the brand over and over again. And then at the end, just a servant of tech billionaires and fascists. And that's the journey from the mid 80s, real American, uniting the country around the 24-inch pythons.
You mentioned that he was a union buster. Say more about that.
This is an important part of the story because this was lore in wrestling for a very, very long time, that right when the WWF, as it was then, was about to just explode in popularity in the mid 80s, Jesse the Body Ventura, future governor, of course, of Minnesota, had a whole crew behind him to unionize the locker room. The wrestlers were going to be unionized. The wrestlers were going to have a say over their schedule. The wrestlers were going to fight for decent health care.
This sounds amazing.
Yes. And to this day, it's never happened. And it didn't happen then. We were never closer than in the mid 80s with Jesse the Body. He had too much respect in the locker room. It was going to come together, and he had good people with him. And then what happens next? Hulk Hogan goes to Vince McMahon and rats out everybody, says what everybody's doing to organize. He's an informant, the whole thing. And again, I grew up in a country, Mark, where the rat was not somebody you celebrated.
Right.
Like
quite the opposite.
Quite the opposite. And I'm talking, we're back to the issue of polycultural and monoculture, because whether, rural, urban, black, brown, white, the rat was not who you wanted to be. Such a big deal that the Oscars, remember, couldn't even give an honorary Oscar to Elia Kazan because 45 years earlier, he informed people were like, oh, hell no, we don't support rats. And yet here Hulk Hogan is the rat. And now we have people in this country clearly who don't think it's a bad thing to be a rat if you are a rat in the service of power. And people like Vince McMahon, like just Paleolithic sexists and alleged rapists, like these are the people that people like Trump then become attracted to, and exactly. Almost oddly paternal, like as Vince as the father, and him running to him about what's happening. And then Vince,
snitching is the word. Snitching to him.
Yeah, he was a snitch. I'll never forget Jim Brown saying to me that a snitch was the lowest form of human life, because at that point you are just saying to the world that they own you and you don't own any part of yourself, and you're doing it by choice.
Yeah.
And so he becomes that snitch. And just to say this, Mark, for years, this was something wrestlers talked about. And
that's the thing.
And it was only until recent years that Hogan came forward and confirmed it. He denied it for years, gaslighting people, the whole thing, and frankly, he's doing the same thing about the abuse allegations by his wife and daughter. I mean, it feels Trumpian. It's like there is no such thing as truth if you can be loud enough and omnipresent enough. And that's why we go back to how I think, fortunate it is from a truly Old Testament standpoint that he goes, does his transition 10 years to the day when people all found out how much of a racist he really was.
What timing? It feels unfair that he didn't get to be held accountable properly, but he never was going to be. I mean, there's a way that even when the leaks came out and he was talking about being a racist, or the audio came out and people were talking about him being a racist, people excused it, including some of the black wrestlers in WWE, although many others didn't. And I think about other wrestlers, people like Bad News Brown and others, who talk about the explicit racism they heard from some of the biggest superstars in the organization. What's the Gawker story? How would you? Because the Gawker story is interesting to me because it's a story that's rooted. It's like he's a terrible person and did some fucked up shit, and then it led to a whole other story. So it's like layers on layers on layers. But please break it down.
It's even like more layers than I even wonder if I can competently explain. But to me, like the most salient part is that Gawker was a website that oversaw a network of other websites. I think that has to be really said, because sites like Deadspin were really important for me as a sports writer and building a kind of sports community of people who cared about like the written word. And, you know, we can name other ones, Roku. I mean, there was a car one. I mean, there was a lot that people gravitated towards under the, I'm forgetting like a really famous one, the women's rights one. Is it called Feminista? No, I'm going to mess it up. But the point is that a lot of very interesting journalism was coming out from under this umbrella. Now, Gawker was like a brawling, sometimes extremely trashy, ethically dubious, but also fearless kind of operation. And I believe that if Gawker still existed, we would have the footnotes of the Epstein list by now. You know, if Gawker was still around. And so, but what happened though is that Gawker published a sex tape of Hulk Hogan. And I don't want to say too much about the tape, but they could have done it in a lot of ways that would have protected themselves. So there are critiques of Gawker that we can definitely make in terms of how they handled even having such a possession of such a thing. And how they chose to display it. There's all sorts of things that we can Monday morning quarterback, certainly that they did wrong. The part to me that's so important, though, is that Gawker was an enemy of the very billionaire tech bros who are currently running our country into the floor. They were going after people whose names we just didn't know. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, like who, you know, they were on that years before the rest of us, as far as these people not only being threats, but being just ethically bereft on every conceivable level.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. Just no love for their fellow man, no love for democracy, no love for marginalized people. This obsession on their own perfection. I mean, we could talk about the roots of that. They're all out of Palo Alto and Stanford, which is just like eugenics.
Eugenics crew, right?
Yeah. They come from the soil of eugenicists, and they were on this very early. They published something that embarrassed one of the most powerful ones, Palantir founder Peter Thiel. He's probably best known now as the person who, you know, effectively owns the receipts on the body and soul of J.D. Vance. That's his own personal sock puppet. And Thiel bankrolled Hogan to the hilt, used every bit of influence to push Gawker into bankruptcy just through the court proceedings themselves and the bankruptcy judgment. And it was just a brutal blow. And actually, I think it taught us a real lesson about the delicacy of internet journalism, the delicate nature, I should say, of internet journalism. And we were really building something that we thought was the next thing and here to last. And a lot of those Gawker sites were really a part of that feel. And they all shut down or spun off and then shut down. I mean, it was really like one of those sliding door world historic defeat kind of moments, I think, for journalism, the written word. I mean, there's no reason why that style of writing couldn't have flourished in the years ahead, but instead, you know, now it's hi, I'm doing a TikTok, please read my book, you know. And I think the Thiel lawsuit is actually the sliding door moment for how we got here.
At the core of the Hogan lawsuit, of course, was, as you said, a sex tape. And Hulk Hogan, he's such a terrible person. I mean, he had sex with his best friend's wife. I think it's important for people to understand. Again, people have a right to have sex with who they want as long as it's consensual. I get all that. But just when you just talk about being a bad person, he had no loyalties. He had no commitments that seemed to force him to make morally upright decisions. He did what was best for him at all times, as a wrestler, as a person, etc. I remember when I was working at HuffPost, I interviewed Hulk Hogan a few times, and I gotta say, he was nice to me, very nice, super kind. My daughter was there one time. He arm wrestled her. Him and Jimmy Hart, sort of like they did a promo for it. It's pretty neat. And I was like, Hulk Hogan is as nice as I would have hoped. And then we were sitting there talking, and the sex tape leaked while we were sitting there. Because golf was a couple minutes, and I was like, "What about this leak?" And he was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, and so we started to talk about why it was happening in real time. And I remember him being disturbed. And I don't remember this. I'm a little fuzzy with the story, so I don't want to give too many details. I have to go back and watch the interview. HuffPost doesn't keep everything. But I remember instantly feeling that this was going to be bigger than a Hulk Hogan or sex. It was that this was going to really change the face of media and journalism. And the fact that I think Hulk Hogan was awarded 9 figures or something. It was something crazy when I think they gave him like 115 in compensatory, like another 35 in like punitive or something. But like it was something crazy. And everything changed. And then I remember maybe a while later, I don't remember how much the tape came of him using the N-word. And I was like, wow, this is not the person who I met. This is not only isn't the person who I saw on TV every Saturday. This isn't the guy I used to stay up for Saturday night's main event to watch. This isn't the guy I rooted for against Andre the Giant, and what is still like one of the most watched TV shows ever. I mean, it's like tens of millions.
The Pontiac Silverdome, WrestleMania 3, just a legendary night. And yet, who stole the show that night? Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Yes.
How many times was Ricky Steamboat the champion? Zero. I mean, you do not need to be Al Sharpton to look at this and say something is amiss. It was totally racist. Vince McMahon as well, caught on tape being a racist. I mean, these people are just comically villainous. Their deals with Saudi Arabia are moral repellents, and a key example of the sports washing that's bringing Saudi Arabia into the community of nations in a way that would have been unthinkable 10 years ago without major reforms in terms of just basic human rights. And WWE has played a role actually a critical role in making that happen.
So when the final story is told on Hulk Hogan, when we think about his legacy, what should the legacy be?
The legacy of Hulk Hogan at the end of the day should be that a hero ain't nothing but a sandwich.
Word.
I mean, this is not someone anybody should be looking up to. And particularly, always remember this. This isn't just a pro wrestling thing. You see people on TV. We do not know these people. And there is an artifice, especially in the age of reality television, of being on television, of being in a view that I think we need to assess much more strongly when we're thinking about the character of these people, because you cannot have a polar opposite character study quite like the real American Hulk Hogan ending his days as a fascist bootlicker.
Chris Cuomo tweeted tonight, Hulk was America, or Hulk is America. What do you make of that statement?
Well, Chris Cuomo, one of the great minds of our time, I'm glad has weighed forth, bringing to bear his considerable history of book learning to the question of what Hulk Hogan and his significance to U.S. society, and the culmination of the greatest education that one of the richest countries in the history of God's green earth could produce, as the son of the governor of the great state of New York, every possible privilege. Chris Cuomo was able to think for a moment about the legacy of the Hulkster and say the words, "Now that's a real American." So what we see in Chris Cuomo, honestly, is the problem with people. I just feel like they're all part of a play right now. like they're on the WWE set talking about somebody who has no semblance of resemblance with reality, with the reality of who this man was. And I think that's why I might feel like my head is going to explode, like in the David Cronenberg movie Scanners, because I'm watching this media, Mark, and I'm asking, who are you talking about? That was a guy on TV.
Right. It's like it's almost like you can love Hulk Hogan. It's Terry Bollea who's the monster. So there's a way that the Hulk image, but the problem with that division is that it lets Hulk Hogan off the hook too, for all the reasons we've been talking about. It's not just that in his private life he was somebody we didn't love. It's that he just wasn't that great a person when you subject his professional life to very much scrutiny. My last question for you, Dave, is what do you say to people who say, okay, fine, maybe he was a bad person, but why can't we let his body get cold first? Why are he was loved and adored. Why are we jumping on the bad stuff right away?
I mean, first and foremost, I love Robert McCall, Denzel Washington's character in the Equalizer movies. That doesn't mean I think Robert McCall is this real dude who's in a diner in Boston. You see what I'm saying? Like, that's part of what's driving me so crazy. This was not a real person that you are discussing on CNN. For people who say, why don't give it time? I would just say that these are the moments where we actually have to lay out the stakes of somebody's legacy, because the cement eventually hardens. And the next thing you know, Meryl Streep is starring in a movie about Margaret Thatcher. If that made sense.
It did. I'm sorry. I was laughing. The mute.
Okay. I was like silent. I was like,
no. I was laughing, and the mute jumped. The mute button had jumped on. No, that was perfect. I appreciate you so much, man. I want to bring you back on because I want to talk about sports washing in general, because I think you raised that today, and I think that's an important. I think that's important.
Huge part of this. Huge.
Yeah. Absolutely. And we'll do that soon, man, because we appreciate you, man. What's the latest book you have out?
Well, I've got one coming out next year. It's my first non-sports book. It's it's a biography of the historian Howard Zinn. And, I'm hoping I can like show some folks who this guy was and the kind of wild life that he did lead. So I hope that works, and I hope writing a book that's not about sports, could be a good thing. We'll see.
I mean, look, you're my favorite writer on sports and at the intersection of sports and politics. But writing a book on Howard Zinn is also necessary. I mean, there are a few people as important as he is in the 20th century in terms of public intellectuals, scholars, writers, historians, all the things. And I'm glad you're telling the story about him. That makes me very, very happy, man. So we'll make sure we check that out. Anyway, Dave Zirin, everybody. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Best to everybody, Mark. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Sincerely.
Appreciate you, kid.
It's inspiring.
Thank you, my brother. All right, y'all. Stay with me. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in about 30 seconds with more Night School. Stay right here. All right, family, welcome back to Night School. Hope you enjoyed the conversation on Hulk Hogan. And look, I know it ain't for everybody, but I think it was a necessary conversation, partly because, again, I'm a wrestling nerd growing up, and I just wanted to get that out of my system, but also the implications of his legacy for other things is super, super, super important. Anyway, let's move on to another story before we go. Ghislaine Maxwell, let's talk about this. Ghislaine Maxwell, once a British socialite with powerful, and I mean powerful connections. Well, she's now at the center of renewed interest from the U.S. Justice Department, 3 years after being sentenced for aiding Jeffrey Epstein in the sexual abuse of underage girls. we're here now. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche plans to personally interview Maxwell in prison to determine whether she has information about other individuals who may have committed crimes against Epstein's victims. The DOJ's decision, it comes just weeks after public backlash over it's a public announcement, and it's really a first announcement that it would not release further Epstein case materials. That move was reversed following pressure from former President Donald J. Trump, who has repeatedly hinted at a cover-up surrounding Epstein's death and connections. Maxwell has consistently maintained her innocence. She said that from day one, claiming she was unaware of any abuse. But her role in recruiting and grooming underage girls, I mean, let me say victims. It was mostly girls, but I'm going to say victims because I think there's some doubt about whether it was all girls. So, but her role in recruiting and grooming underage victims for Epstein led to her 2021 conviction on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking and conspiracy. Right now, she's serving a 20-year sentence in a Florida federal prison. And the interview, it's supposed to be part of a broader political and legal reckoning following Epstein's 2019 death in federal custody, which was officially ruled a suicide, but nobody believes that. But we'll get at that another time. This is messy. It's interesting, but it's messy. I can't wait to see what comes out, because I think that we're going to get all the information we need on this at some point, even if it's a half a century from now. And I can't wait to find out. I mean, actually, let me not say that. A half a century, I may not be around, but I hope somebody finds out what's really good with it. Anyway, let's get on to the next story. Outrage is mounting in Jacksonville, Florida, after viral released video is showing police officers violently smashing a car window and punching a black man during what seemed like a regular traffic stop. 22-year-old William McNeil Jr., the man seen in the now viral footage, has retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump and Harry Daniels, both of whom are calling the incident a clear case of excessive force and police misconduct. The traffic stop happened back in February 19th to be exact, when officers pulled McNeil over for allegedly driving without headlights and not wearing a seatbelt during inclement weather. You'll see it in the video in a second. The sun was still out, so I don't know what they're talking about. According to the official police report, McNeil was verbally combative and, quote, reached for a knife. Yeah, it's hard to believe any of that. I don't know. Let's see what actually happened. Take a look at this. And of course, it's on Ben Crump's page, as it should be. Here we go. I want you to watch this. I apologize, y'all. I have a little tech issue here. We got Hulk Hogan popping up when it shouldn't be Hulk Hogan. Here we go. I figured out what the problema is. And I want you all to listen to this carefully, because this is part of the story. I can't hear it either. Here we go.
You're still required to have headlights on.
Can you pull that law up?
Huh?
Can you pull that law up?
Yeah, when you step out of the car, I will.
Can you call your supervisor?
Huh?
Can you call your supervisor?
All right, go for it.
Exit the vehicle now. Exit the vehicle. Show me your hand.
Here.
I'm here. What is your reason, sir? What is your reason?
Step out now.
All right. No, don't.
Stop fighting.
Put your hands behind your back.
Put your hands behind your back. Hands behind your back. What's wrong with you?
Ain't no talking now, man. Ain't no talking.
Fucking talking shit, bro. I was doing it, bro. What's going
going on, man?
You're under arrest. That's what's going
bro,
on.
No, bro.
Yes, bro.
You
Yes.
have a local reason,
Big
bro.
Life Center in here too.
You gonna throw the ball like that, bro?
Yeah, I'm gonna take it off
now,
you,
man.
bro.
And I'm just trying to have a regular conversation with y'all, bro.
That's not how it works.
Too late. It ain't no too late.
When they asked you to step out of the vehicle, you should have done that shit.
Sir, your partner didn't even ask.
Marijuana in his right pocket.
Yes.
So why close the door if you see him pull up?
Because, man, what you mean? He talking about arresting me and stuff, bro. I didn't do nothing.
Oh.
It's called resisting, idiot.
I didn't do nothing wrong, sir. Can you back me up to the car so I can lean up? Shut up.
This is the type of video that for many people is the embodiment of a trigger warning. It's so familiar, it's so scary. Unless you know that for many of us, getting home safely in one piece took more than a notion. And this is kind of evidence of that. I'm tired of them. Obviously, I'm tired of police brutality, but I'm also tired of the assumption that we don't belong wherever we are. I'm tired of the assumption that we're violent. I'm tired of the assumption that our silence merits a violent response when it just shouldn't. It shouldn't. And I could go on and on, but I'm hoping for a full investigation. I'm hoping for the police to be held accountable. I don't want them in prison. So I'm not sure that solves the issue, but I want something significant to happen. Let's stay with this violence thing, because I have been struggling a bit with this fraternity hazing stuff for a long time. Not Omega Psi Phi in particular, but all of the organizations, including the one I'm in. And I just you know, maybe I'm trying to load up the video here too. So I'm having a little technical difficulty, y'all. I'm going to introduce the story again on the other side of the break. We're going to take another break for 3 minutes, and I'm having a little bit of a tech issue. I'm not able to load the video, and I think it's important. I can't even load the banner. So there we go. Actually, you know what? There we go. All right, family. A tragic loss has led to swift and serious action at Southern University and A&M College. The university has expelled the Beta Sigma chapter of Omega Psi Phi fraternity following an investigation into the hazing-related death of 20-year-old Caleb Wilson. Wilson was a junior majoring in mechanical engineering and a beloved trumpet player in Southern's world-renowned marching band. The band is called the Human Jukebox, if you already didn't know. His unexpected passing prompted a thorough investigation, which found the fraternity in violation of the university's student code of conduct, specifically the conduct for illegal hazing practices. And just to be clear, y'all, all hazing is illegal. In a statement, the university said the disciplinary hearing found the chapter responsible and that the expulsion is final with no appeals process. Here's what the expulsion entails. It's no longer recognized as a student organization, chapter. They lose all campus privileges. The fraternity has to wipe off all visible markers on campus, you know, plots, monuments, memorials, etc. This is interesting. I'm looking at one of the updates here, and it says there's no immediate path to reinstatement. That means that you're gone and we really don't want you back, which is wild because there's so, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But this, whatever you feel about Omega Psi Phi, it's interesting to say that there's no path. I never loved those kinds of outcomes. But Southern University emphasized the zero tolerance policy for hazing, student endangerment, and misconduct. And the university has pledged to continue fostering a life of safety and inclusion for students on campus, and to hold everyone to the highest standard of accountability. So it's no surprise that Southern is dropped. I mean, a kid was killed there. It's hard to keep the fraternity going for a lot, for public relations reasons, for just respect for. I mean, there's a million reasons why, but it's a lot. I can only imagine. Family, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the deep dive on Hulk Hogan. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for making every night here special to me. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're so inclined, hit the join button. Do what we're doing here every single day. It's up to you. All right, family. I'll see you later. Peace.